The story's next on The National. Those Somali pirates holding the world up for ransom. Is there another side to the story? Joe Schlesinger's on the case. Well, as we saw again this weekend, piracy is a major problem in the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean. In the waters off Somalia, pirates have been seizing commercial ships for ransom. Canada is one of the countries with warships patrolling the region. This weekend in the Gulf of Aden, a Canadian helicopter from HMCS Winnipeg is said to have chased away 3 pirate vessels that were approaching a merchant ship. Still, the pirates succeeded this weekend more than they failed. They captured ships from France, Germany, Yemen, and Taiwan. And this morning, they hijacked a British-owned cargo ship. But there is another side to this story. Some see the piracy as a response to the turmoil Somalia has been going through. Here's the CBC's Joe Schlesinger.
It's a great international flotilla dedicated to a common cause. Warships of more than 20 navies. Some of the countries involved, the US and Iran for instance, normally don't see eye to eye on anything. Yet here they are, for once united in a common mission, stopping the pirates who've been seizing ships off the coast of Somalia. Over the past year, Somali pirates have attacked more than 100 ships, holding them for ransom before freeing them and their crews. They're estimated to have got away with $30 million last year. This has disrupted traffic along the busy shipping lane connecting Europe and Asia that carries much of the world's oil supply. All but unnoticed amid the outrage over the hijackings, a different group of pirates has for years managed to wreak havoc of Somalia without international naval patrols bothering to stop them. In this case, it's not Somalis who are the pirates, they are the victims. With no government to enforce its sovereignty, foreign ships have been dumping toxic waste off Somalia's coast, and foreign trawlers have been fishing illegally in its waters. Ahmed Hussein is president of the Canadian National Somali Congress.
When you see the coverage of piracy in most international media, you don't hear much about the $300 million annually that's lost by Somali fishermen in illegal fishing done by foreign interests. You also never hear about the cost that cannot be estimated in terms of the negative costs of toxic waste dumping.
Clear evidence of the dumping surfaced literally 4 years ago in containers washed ashore by waves from the Asian tsunami. People living along the Somali coast suddenly started falling sick. That caught the attention of the United Nations Environment Program. Nick Nuttall is the program's spokesman.
There were many, many eyewitness accounts of people with bleeding gums, people with all sorts of skin rashes, abdominal hemorrhaging, and respiratory problems, which were linked with eyewitness accounts of rather large containers being tossed up by the tsunami of 2004 onto the beaches and breaking up.
But proving a direct link between the illnesses and the toxic waste has so far turned out to be impossible. The UN did send investigators to Somalia, but the mission was a quickie, only 4 days, not enough time to definitively establish a link or to assess the extent of the dumping, never mind trying to determine who was doing it. The UN and others have been trying to get back in, but have found it too dangerous.
You know, the political vacuum in Somalia, the tensions in Somalia, the conflicts in Somalia have really made it extremely difficult for any international response to get a handle on this potential problem of toxic waste.
Somalia has indeed become a no-go zone. Its long, brutal civil war has reduced the country to the torments of never-ending violence, disease, poverty, and starvation. Outsiders who came to help have also ended up paying a price. Just think of the humiliating U.S. retreat from Somalia in '93 in the aftermath of Black Hawk Down, the incident in which a Somali mob killed 18 American soldiers from a downed helicopter. It is understandable that outside powers, having been bitten, are now gun-shy about trying to intervene. What is hard to comprehend is why the outside world would make things worse for the Somalis by turning a blind eye to foreigners fishing illegally in Somali waters and poisoning them with toxic waste. Most of the damage may have been done by European ships, but Canada has also played a role, says Bruce Cox, Executive Director of Greenpeace Canada.
Some of the toxic waste that washed up in Somalia was uranium. I mean, it shouldn't be lost on Canadians, that there's a 50-50 chance that the uranium is part of a life cycle that ends up in Somalia, but perhaps started in Uranium City in Saskatchewan.
Whether it's uranium from Canada dumped on a Somali beach or pillaged Somali fish ending up as sushi in European restaurants, he says, it's all part of the same problem.
It is stolen fish, and a lot of times, I mean, the result is hunger. I mean, we are taking food out of the mouths of others.
And, as can be expected, the starving people who've been robbed have retaliated with some plundering of their own. The attacks on foreign ships, Somalis say, started as a reaction to foreign pillagers trying to put their fishermen out of business.
And so these Somali fishermen got angry and started to arm themselves and start to basically try to chase away these foreign trawlers who were wrongly fishing within the Somali territorial zone.
In the absence of any authority, they saw themselves as acting as an informal coast guard.
And after a period of time, the Somali fishermen had it, and they had started taking some of these vessels and demanding a tax. The amounts of money that they were starting to get from these fishing trawlers that were hijacked was so much that they put two and two together and figured, wait a second, why are we doing this small-scale fishing operation when we can start to make a lot of money? So it sort of started to dawn on them that they could turn this into industry, at least some of them. And so, that was the beginning of piracy.
The Somali pirates did it, at least in the beginning, out of desperation. The intruders who took over the fishing in their waters did it out of sheer greed. The illegal fishing brought in huge profits.
There have been calculations done that you could perhaps dump a ton of toxic waste in Africa for about $8 per ton, versus the costs of safe disposal, say in Europe or maybe North America, of about $1,000 a ton. So there's a huge potential profit in such an illegal trade.
It makes the $3 million paid to the pirates who held a Saudi oil tanker for 2 months look like chump change.
Clearly, the international community is culpable to the extent that it may have allowed toxic waste to leave ports in developed economies and end up in a vulnerable community in a vulnerable country like Somalia with enough problems, let alone dealing with toxic waste.
I mean, it's hypocritical to be saying that, we have a force in there that is going after pirates in order that we can carry on business as usual.
The developed world has indeed turned a blind eye, so much so that we don't really know how much or even whether the pillaging is still going on in Somali waters. If it has stopped, you can be sure that the plunderers can find other vulnerable African coastal states in which to carry on their dirty business. That's Somalia's and Africa's tragedy and our shame. Joel Schlesinger, CBC News, Toronto.